The conference room smelled like burnt coffee and panic sweat. I stood near the end of the table where I always did, half visible, half forgotten, while Ariel Denton paced at the head with all the theatrical presence of a talk show host, pretending not to enjoy herself too much. Her lips were glossy movement sharp, and when she smiled, it was like someone had handed her a trophy she didn't earn. "Before we wrap," she said, tapping a manila envelope against her palm, "we have one more update to share. Effective immediately, we're realigning our leadership structure for scalability and strategic growth. Some of the department heads shifted in their seats. Junior developers blinked, brows furrowed, sensing something off, but not quite sure how to name it. Reese, the CTO, adjusted his collar, but said nothing. Ariel turned her gaze to me like a cat watching a mouse. Forget it was being hunted. "Talia, thank you for your many years of dedication. Today will be your final day with Orbian Nexus." Silence. Then a flutter of confused movement, half of them looking at me, the other half pointedly not. She slid the envelope across the table toward me as if it were a party favor. "Your severance package is generous. We've arranged for IT to revoke access by noon. You'll find all the terms inside." I stared at the envelope for a moment. I didn't reach for it. I looked around the room, past Ariel, past Reese, past the polished windows that reflected their blank, complicit faces. No one spoke. No one stood up. And that was the real message, wasn't it? She expected a scene, expected me to crumble to beg. But I had seen this moment coming, and I had prepared for it more thoroughly than any rollout I'd ever designed. I reached up and unclipped my badge. Quiet. Gentle. Then I placed it precisely at the edge of the table, just touching the envelope. I said calmly, "You tell legal why your entire system vanishes in 6 minutes." Ariel blinked. Somewhere in the room, a chair creaked. I turned and walked toward the door. Not hurried, not smug, just done. Behind me, the silence stretched uneasy and long. I didn't look back as I stepped into the corridor, though I could hear it, the subtle shift in the air when confidence curdles into fear. Behind me, voices started rising low at first, then sharper. Footsteps tapped in opposite directions. Chairs scraped the floor. Someone fumbled a tablet to the ground. My heels clicked steadily against the marble as I walked, each step deliberate, measured. The badge was gone, but the power was still very much with me. By the time I reached the elevator, the first alert had sounded soft, unmistakable, the tone the ops team used for non-critical system anomalies, a polite ping, the kind that doesn't trigger panic, just a mild frown. Then came the second, sharper, urgent. I tapped the elevator call button. The door hadn't even opened when the third alert hit, followed by a sharp, unmistakable shit from someone down the hallway. Behind the walls, the infrastructure I had built, layered and elegant, was entering lockdown. I could picture it all in real-time server nodes, halting sync, internal APIs failing their handshake, validations, automated shipment predictions turning into gibberish as the neural nets dropped into freeze mode. PulseLink wasn't crashing. It was protecting itself. The elevator dinged. I stepped in and turned around just in time to see Reese Langford burst from the conference room like a man on fire. His eyes scanned until they landed on me. He opened his mouth, but I raised a finger. 5 minutes left, I said. The doors closed. As the elevator hummed downward, I allowed myself one breath. Not a sigh, not relief. Just control. Reese would be sprinting to the operations bay. Ariel would be grasping for anyone still pretending to follow her lead. It would be on a call with legal already trying to figure out what unauthorized credential lockout cascade meant in plain English. And above all, somewhere inside the server cluster, Argus was doing exactly what I designed it to do. By the time I stepped into the lobby, the emergency alert lighting had already switched to amber. 9 years ago, Orbian Nexus was nothing more than a logo, a pitch deck and a folding table in a co-working space that smelled like burnt ramen and ambition. Ariel wasn't in the picture then. Neither was Reese. It was just me, two over-caffeinated founders, and an idea scribbled on a whiteboard in Expo marker that stained my hand for days. They wanted to disrupt logistics. I asked them how. They shrugged and said, "That's what we hired you to figure out." So I did. I built Argus from nothing, named it after the all-seeing giant in mythology, because that's what we needed. An eye on every truck, every dock, every change in supply flow before it even happened. I designed the architecture, the AI feedback loops, the redundancy protocols, the predictive neural overlays. It was elegant, scalable, alive, and it worked. We landed our first contract within 11 months. Within 2 years, we were servicing 6 of the 10 largest freight operators in North America. At every investor meeting, they paraded me out like a mascot. "Talia's the engine," they'd say. We'd be nowhere without her. But somewhere around year 8, the smiles started thinning. Ariel came in with that MBA sheen and jargon-laced confidence. I taught her more in 2 weeks than she'd absorbed in her entire degree. Then the folders started locking me out. Meeting invites dried up. Decisions were made without me. My seat at the table was always just being reassigned for flexibility. I noticed. Of course I did. Then a week ago, I walked into the print room and saw it forgotten on the tray like it meant nothing. A draft contract. Offer of employment, Connor Whitlow, 25, 2 years out of university. A few flashy GitHub projects. No real-world load handling. But he was cheaper. They weren't just replacing me. They were deleting me. My name had already been removed from the system design docs, from the patent draft language, even from the internal wiki, as if I had never been there. But they forgot one thing: you can't erase the blueprint if the architect still holds the original. 6 months ago, the silence became a pattern. Access logs showed my credentials had been used at strange hours, then rolled back. Folders I created were overwritten with updated versions, scrubbed of any reference to my name. Ariel stopped asking questions in meetings. Reese stopped answering mine, so I stopped pretending not to see it coming. That's when I built Protocol 7. Not a virus, not sabotage. Something far more elegant. A conditional fail-safe buried deep within Argus, triggered only if my security credentials were removed without a formal offboarding sequence. In that case, the system would interpret it as a hostile takeover attempt and initiate lockout protocols across its architecture. It didn't delete, it didn't damage, it just shut everything down. I designed it the way I built everything else at Orbion, with control, with redundancy, with intelligence. Argus is not just software. It's a living, learning ecosystem, predictive logistics mapped across AI branches, automated shipment engines, real-time fleet patterning, and multi-node core synchronizers. It understands risk, and it understands trust. When Protocol 7 activates, it doesn't alert the user. No warning, no blinking red lights. It simply isolates itself, cutting API access, freezing client interfaces, disabling internal dashboards, one layer at a time. To most, it looks like a catastrophic failure. But underneath, Argus isn't broken. It's doing exactly what I trained it to do: protect itself. I didn't tell anyone about Protocol 7. I didn't document it in the system notes, not even in my private backups, because I didn't need to remember how it worked. I had written it line by line. It was part of me. And just in case someone got smart enough to dig around, I masked it behind an innocuous diagnostic script named Legacy Node Stabilizer VAV3. No one ever questioned it. Why would they? By the time Ariel signed off on my termination, the switch had already flipped. The moment my credentials were revoked, Argus interpreted it for what it was: an untrusted hand reaching for the core. And now it was closing the door. They knocked at 8:47 p.m. Not timidly, not with the caution of professionals trying to appear polite. No, it was the kind of knock you hear in a thunderstorm when the power's out and someone's desperate to get inside. 3 sharp raps, then silence. I already knew who it was. When I opened the door, Reese Langford was standing there, collar, unbuttoned tie, crooked. Behind him, Myron Halley, the operations director, clutched a tablet like it might save her life. She hadn't even bothered with makeup. Her blazer was wrinkled and there was a glint of something real behind her usually manicured expression. "May we come in?" Reese asked, voice brittle with forced calm. I stepped aside without a word. They entered like guests at a wake shoes, dragging slightly eyes, flickering around the room like it might explode. I offered no drinks, no pleasantries, just waited while they floundered through the silence. It's bad," Myron started. "Clients are dropping by the hour," Reese added, "and the freight sinks. Argus isn't just down, it's rejecting us." I folded my arms, so it knows who it trusts. They both paused. Reese cleared his throat. We need to talk about reversing this. Whatever it is." I held his gaze. "There's no reversal. Nothing broke." He blinked. "Then how do we fix it?" I let the words settle before replying. "You don't." "I do." Myron leaned forward carefully. "Talia, look, we know Ariel mishandled this. This wasn't supposed to happen like that." "No," I said quietly. "It wasn't." I walked to my desk and opened my laptop, logged in. The interface sprang to life like it always had. I turned it so they could see full access. No restriction, no errors. Their faces fell. "I was never locked out," I said. "I just stopped defending you." They stood motionless, absorbing what that meant, not just technically, but politically. Their empire wasn't under attack from outside. It was crumbling because its architect had finally stepped away. They sat across from me at the kitchen island, the tension stretching tight between us like a live wire. Reese kept glancing at my screen as if the dashboard might change its mind and welcome him back in. Myron hadn't said a word in minutes. Her fingers trembled slightly where they rested on the countertop. I closed the laptop gently as if sealing a negotiation rather than slamming a door. Then I spoke, my voice measured steady. "If you want Argus back, here's what happens next." Reese straightened, but I didn't pause. 1. I receive 60% ownership of the Argus intellectual property, retroactive and future. Myron blinked. Her lips parted, but no words came. 2, I continued. I'm reinstated as Chief Technology Officer. Full authority. No interim nonsense. Reese opened his mouth. I kept going. 3. An $18 million retroactive buyout for breach of intellectual trust removal without cause and attempted erasure of authorship. Now Myron looked like she might be sick. 4. I said, calm as ever. A public apology. Posted on the Orbian Nexus homepage for no less than 72 hours. Signed by the executive board, naming me Tahlia Marinor as the sole creator of Argus. Reese finally found his voice. This is outrageous. I met his eyes. 5. I take a seat on the board. He leaned forward, almost laughing. This isn't a negotiation, it's extortion. No, I said. It's restitution. The word hit like a slow wave. Myron turned to Reese. She's not bluffing. I know, he muttered. They sat there for a while, quietly unraveling. I didn't push. Letting them stew was more effective than any threat. Eventually, Myron asked, voice barely audible. Do we even have the authority to approve that? You don't, I said, but you'll carry it to the board. Reese exhaled through his teeth, nodding once. Ariel's not going to like this. Then she shouldn't have made the mistake of thinking she could steal a system without stealing the woman behind it. I stood and picked up the manila folder I'd prepared days ago, slid it across the island toward them. Reese hesitated before pulling it closer. She didn't knock. The door flew open at 9:06 a.m., sharp, nearly ricocheting off the wall. Ariel Denton stormed in like a hurricane with a grudge, still dressed in last night's blazer hair, pulled back in a way that tried and failed to look in control. She smelled of expensive perfume and unraveling nerves. You think this is a game, she snapped. You've just cost this company everything. I didn't flinch. I didn't stand. She paced in front of me like a prosecutor mid-meltdown. You'll be sued. disgraced, disbarred from every board in the country. Do you have any idea what you've done? Yes, I said and turned my laptop toward her. She hesitated, then looked. Her face tightened as she scanned the live dashboard. 92% system failure, 137 SLA breaches, 24 legal filings either submitted or pending, and climbing. Fast. I leaned back. This is what Argus looks like without its architect. Ariel's lips parted like she wanted to scream again, but the sound caught somewhere behind her pride. I reached for the manila folder I'd left on the table and slid it toward her. Everything's here, signed by Reese Myron and the board chair. You're the last one. She didn't touch it. I won't be strong-armed by some bitter engineer with a vendetta, she spat. I smiled, not cruelly, but precisely. You're being given the chance to sign with dignity. After this moment, that option vanishes. She stood there for a long time, breathing through her teeth. Her hands shook, just barely. Then she pulled a pen from her pocket, gold-plated as always, and signed. One line, then another. When she was done, she shoved the folder back at me like it burned. You've just made the biggest mistake of your life. No, I said quietly. That was yours. When you tried to erase the only person who knew how to keep your empire standing. She turned and slammed the door behind her. I didn't move for a while. Just watched the cursor blink at the edge of the screen, waiting for what came next. By noon the next day, I was back in the system. Argus was still wounded, but responsive. I'd spent the morning triaging broken endpoints, restoring neural loops, and re-sequencing predictive modules. It felt like performing surgery on something I'd raised since birth, delicate but familiar. Then something blinked on the lower diagnostics pane. A ping, external, not malicious, yet. It hovered near the old back door I'd buried under layers of innocuous script. Most people wouldn't have noticed, but I did. I flagged the access point, buried it behind fresh encryption, and let the system log the request. It was too clean to be an accident. Someone was probing just enough to test the perimeter without setting off alarms. That night, just after 11, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I let it ring once before answering. This is Tahlia. A man's voice, smooth and precise. Miss Marinor, I represent Paramount Helix. My name is Vincent Carter. I said nothing. We've reviewed your work. Argus is exceptional. Our firm would like to acquire it for $100 million, immediate transfer, clean transaction. No, I said simply. There was a pause. Then the tone shifted. You might want to reconsider. This isn't a friendly request. My grip tightened, but my voice remained level. That sounds a lot like a threat, Vincent. Call it pressure, he said smoothly. We've already invested heavily in the outcome. He hung up. I moved fast, ran a trace through Argus's deep protocols, piggybacking on the earlier ping. The path was cloaked, well rerouted through Zurich, then Singapore, then Buenos Aires. But not well enough. The origin resolved to a server cluster tied to Vanguard Strategic Holdings, operating under a shell Paramount Helix. I kept digging. Then I found it a memo sloppily sanitized, but still leaking metadata. Objective, acquire Argus by any means necessary. Phase 1, remove creator. Phase 2, force acquisition. Ariel wasn't just a threat. She was a pawn, and I had just flipped the board. The first attack hit just before dawn. It started as a trickle-odd credential verifications, malformed API requests, but within minutes the wave crested. Injection attempts, DDoS floods, credential stuffing from international ports, all firing in rhythmic succession. It wasn't chaos. It was coordinated. They weren't trying to destroy Argus. They were trying to seize it. I initiated a full lockdown, sealing off every non-critical system and vaulting the core modules behind encryption layers only I could unlock. The system dimmed, hushed like a bunker, sealing its doors. Then I activated Athena Layer, a dormant AI firewall I'd written years ago as a thought experiment, one I never thought I'd need. It spun up, quietly absorbed the traffic, and started mapping the fingerprints of the attack. Zurich, Singapore, Buenos Aires, same signature, same timing, same architecture. Athena flagged the route. Vanguard Strategic Holdings, operating under a nested shell corporation, Paramount Helix. Vincent's voice echoed in my mind, smug and veiled. They hadn't expected me to fight back. They certainly hadn't expected me to trace them. I compiled everything: trace logs server, metadata, financial records, internal memos. Then I split the packet in 3. 1 copy to the FBI Cybercrime Division, 1 to the SEC, and 1 to a curated press list, TechCrunch wired Forbes. The moment the last file left my secure channel, the attacks began to slow. Then stop. 10 minutes later, my phone rang again. This time, not an unknown number. It was Vincent Carter. That was unnecessary. He said, the edge in his voice raw, now no longer polished. No, Vincent. I said calmly. What was unnecessary was thinking you could erase me and keep what I built. He was quiet for a long moment. This isn't over. I smiled and leaned back in my chair. It is for you. By sunrise, the headlines were everywhere. Tech sabotage foiled by creator herself. FBI opens investigation into Vanguard's acquisition plot. Argus architect Talia Marinor saves Orbian Nexus from collapse. I didn't have to issue a statement. The audit trail spoke for itself. Investors had finally realized the truth. Argus wasn't the problem. The people trying to steal it were. Stocks surged by mid-morning. Legal dropped 2 pending suits. 3 new clients reached out before noon. When I walked through Orbian's glass front doors, people didn't avoid my gaze anymore. Conversations paused, but not in contempt, this time in recognition. Whispers followed me, and for the first time, I let them. On the top floor, the boardroom waited full house, every member seated. Ariel stood near the windows, pale, composed, but holding herself like glass waiting to crack. Reese and Myron didn't speak. They didn't need to. I placed my folder on the table and opened it without a word. My title read, Chief Technology Officer. Below it, board member, finalized, filed, ratified. Then I looked at Ariel. You're terminated, I said evenly, effective immediately. She didn't argue, just walked out without looking back. When the door clicked shut, I turned to the board. Now, I said, we rebuild. No one spoke. I sat down my seat now, officially, and opened the dashboard. Argus was stable again, sealed, watching. I tapped a single command. A fresh diagnostic launched on every system node. No more parasites, I added, no more backdoors. From this point forward, everything flows through me. There were nods around the table, respectful, some uncertain. That was fine. Later that night, alone in my apartment, I poured tea and watched the skyline flicker against the dark. My inbox chimed once. No sender, no subject. Just a message. This isn't over. I stared at it for a long moment, then smiled. No. I whispered. It's just beginning.